didn't make any sense to her. How did a melody that she had locked down over the summer, last summer, suddenly appear on Jennifer Lopez's album? This was something that really bothered.
What if everything you thought you knew about the music industry was just smoke and mirrors? What if two of the biggest icons in pop culture, Beyoncé and Jennifer Lopez, didn't just rise to the top on talent alone, but on the strategic erasure of another legend's legacy?
Are they drunk in love?
I don't know. I love Beyonce, but I have not.
Mariah just flew in from her own planet. I'm telling you, this is Mariah's.
From my own planet?
Yes,
I did.
yes, absolutely.
It sounds wild, right? But behind the glitter and Grammys, there's a story that keeps getting swept under the red carpet. A story with whispers of sabotage, shady executive decisions, and careers that were seemingly redirected, not by chance, but by calculated power plays. And at the center of it all, Mariah Carey.
Die kenne ich nicht.
Rivalries, but I don't think she has anything to do with me. I mean, my whole thing is singing, writing
She's
songs.
an actress.
Yeah, and I've been doing this, my whole life. Singing is first and foremost. It's a God-given talent that I'm grateful for. Her thing is something.
One of the most gifted vocalists in music history. A woman who didn't just sing songs, she wrote them, produced them, and defined the sound of an entire generation. But somehow, over the years, her spotlight dimmed. Not because the talent faded, it never did, but because the industry started pushing someone else forward. Someone newer, louder, more marketable. And according to rumors, that someone might have been Beyonce, and another someone, J.Lo now.
How did that J.Lo record actually happen? You wrote the song for yourself, or you wrote it for J.Lo?
No, I wrote it for J.Lo.
Here's where it gets messy. There's footage of a young Beyonce idolizing Mariah Carey, practically worshiping the ground she walked on. We're talking sun, moon, and vocal range levels of admiration. But fast forward a few years, and that love, gone, like it never existed. And J.Lo? Well, let's just say there's a reason Mariah once said, "I don't know her," a phrase that became a meme, but started as a reaction to something very real and very personal. So the question is, did these two stars rise while Mariah was pushed aside? Was it just timing? Or was it something deeper? Was Mariah Carey's career deliberately derailed? And if so, who pulled the strings? Let's rewind the tapes, because this story goes way deeper than diva drama. Long before TikTok trends and streaming numbers, before surprise albums and visual drops, there was Mariah Carey. Not just a pop star, but a musical architect. She didn't ride waves, she built them. In the 1990s, Mariah wasn't just dominating the charts, she was crafting them. She wrote her own lyrics, arranged her own harmonies, and produced the kind of songs that didn't just climb, they stuck. Hits like Fantasy, Vision of Love, and Hero weren't just anthems. They were blueprints for what modern pop could sound like when real talent met real creative control. And she did all this in an industry that barely handed women the mic, let alone the master rights. While others were molded by labels, Mariah was building her brand from the inside out. Glamorous, but untouchable. Vulnerable, yet powerful. She was the original hybrid. A singer's singer who still managed to own the radio waves. And she did it as a woman of color, at a time when that kind of visibility and control was almost unheard of. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. One of the many young girls watching her ascend, Beyonce Knowles. Long before the Super Bowls, the Met Galas, and the billion-dollar tours, Bey was just another kid from Houston, mesmerized by the sound of Mariah's voice. In interviews, she gushed about Vision of Love, saying it was the song that made her want to be a singer in the first place. There are old clips of a teenage Beyonce speaking with almost spiritual reverence about Mariah. She wasn't out there name-dropping Whitney or Aretha in those early days. It was always Mariah. The runs, the range, the way she carried herself. Beyonce didn't just admire her, she studied her. It's no stretch to say that without Mariah Carey, there might never have been a Beyonce as we know her, at least not with that vocal identity, that command, that presence. Mariah was more than an influence. She was the blueprint, the woman who proved you could be beautiful, powerful, and deeply in control of your music, and still top the charts doing it your way. But here's the catch. In an industry that only has room for one diva at the top at a time, being the blueprint can become a threat. And soon, that admiration Beyonce once showed, it would go completely silent. Somewhere along the way, the narrative flipped. All those early shout-outs from Beyonce to Mariah, they started to vanish. The praise that once flowed so naturally, gone. Not just faded, but almost scrubbed clean. Interviews, performances, moments that once celebrated Mariah's influence started to disappear from the conversation. And fans noticed. People started asking, what happened? Why did Beyonce, someone who once said Mariah Carey lit the spark for her, suddenly go quiet about her? Now, to be fair, we don't know what happened behind closed doors. There's no confirmed fallout, no public beef, but that silence? It was loud. Because around the same time Beyonce was building her empire, breaking off from Destiny's Child, creating visual albums, rebranding herself as a cultural force, Mariah's media presence was shifting. She was being painted more and more as the holiday diva, the high-maintenance legend, the woman who shows up in heels at 3 a.m. and floats through life on sparkles and shade. Meanwhile, Beyonce? She was out to change the world. With every new album, every performance, she positioned herself as a game changer, a culture leader, someone who wasn't just chasing greatness. She was redefining it. And when you're trying to build a legacy that stands next to names like Michael Jackson or Prince, you don't want to be compared to someone the media's labeling as yesterday's glitter. So maybe, just maybe, Beyonce started to see Mariah not as the woman who inspired her, but as a relic, a piece of the past. And if you're carefully crafting your brand, you don't just move forward, you distance yourself from what doesn't fit. But here's where the rumors really kick in. Some insiders claim Beyonce didn't just drift away naturally. They say it was calculated, that as she and Jay-Z's power in the industry grew, the narrative around Mariah was quietly managed, minimized, that the woman who once shaped the very sound of pop was no longer part of the story. And while Beyonce climbed higher and higher, Mariah was left fighting for recognition in the very space she helped build. Coincidence? Strategy? Or something more? Because if Beyonce did distance herself intentionally, the question is, why? What was so risky about being associated with Mariah Carey? And what if Mariah knew exactly what was going on? Just as things were shifting with Beyonce, another name suddenly started lighting up the charts. Jennifer Lopez. She had the look, she had the style, and she had momentum. Big time. But when J.Lo's music career exploded in the early 2000s, people couldn't help but raise eyebrows. Because, while she brought energy and stage presence, her vocals, let's just say, they didn't quite hit like Mariah's. And yet, somehow, J.Lo was getting everything. The radio play, the movies, the endorsements, the red carpet domination. She was everywhere, almost overnight. But behind that glamorous takeover was a moment that made fans of Mariah do a double take. A moment involving a song called Loverboy and a strange little track called Firecracker. See, Mariah had secured a very specific sample from Yellow Magic Orchestra's 1978 song Firecracker for her single Loverboy, which was part of the soundtrack to her movie Glitter. It wasn't just a cool beat, it was a strategic sound choice. She built the whole track around it. But then, like something out of a bad movie plot, that exact same sample showed up on a J.Lo track just weeks before Mariah's version was scheduled to drop. Now you might say, okay, maybe just a weird coincidence. But here's where it gets downright shady. At the time, Mariah was trying to separate herself from Tommy Mottola, her ex-husband, and the powerful executive at Sony Music. Their breakup wasn't just personal, it was deeply professional, and he wasn't taking it well. According to Mariah, and later confirmed in interviews and her memoir, Tommy allegedly went behind her back, got wind of the Firecracker sample she had locked down, and rushed to give it to Jennifer Lopez, who just so happened to be another Sony artist. In one swift move, J.Lo dropped her track with the Firecracker sample, and Mariah was forced to scramble, replacing the song's entire sound at the last minute. The result? Her rollout suffered, her single underperformed, and the entire Glitter project started falling apart before it even had a chance. Sabotage? Mariah sure thought so. And it didn't help that J.Lo didn't say a word. She rolled with it, performed the song, collected the praise, and stayed silent. All while Mariah's public image began unraveling in real time. Breakdown rumors, negative press, a movie bomb, and a career that, for a moment, looked like it was spiraling. And here's the thing. The industry didn't just let it happen. It pushed it. Instead of protecting Mariah, a woman who'd sold over 150 million records by then, they shifted the spotlight to a new face, a more marketable one. And Jennifer Lopez, knowingly or not, became the beneficiary of one of the most infamous takedowns in pop history. But that was just the start, because Mariah wasn't about to stay quiet forever. And the next move? It came wrapped in glitter and delivered with shade. You've seen the clip. A reporter asks Mariah Carey about Jennifer Lopez, and without missing a beat, she drops one of the most iconic lines in pop culture history. "I don't know her." The internet exploded. It became a meme, a t-shirt, a whole mood. But what most people don't realize is that moment wasn't about shade for the cameras. It was about betrayal. Let's rewind. After the firecracker sabotage, Mariah tried to keep things moving, but the industry was already shifting under her feet. Her album, Glitter, got buried. Her personal struggles were turned into tabloid headlines. Meanwhile, J.Lo was everywhere, booking Super Bowl stages, launching fragrance lines, starring in blockbuster films. And Mariah? She was constantly being framed as difficult, diva, or unstable. So when someone asked her about J.Lo, a woman who had allegedly benefited from sabotaging Mariah's own single, what was she supposed to say? Oh yes, love her. Mariah's response wasn't just petty. It was calculated, controlled, powerful in its simplicity. "I don't know her." Translation: she didn't earn her place. She didn't write. She didn't sing. She didn't pay the same dues. And the tea didn't stop there. In a 2002 interview with Larry King, Mariah doubled down when asked if there was beef. She didn't blink. "There's no competition," she said. "If the other person can't sing, period." She didn't even need to raise her voice. The mic drop was automatic. Mariah also threw shade in her now iconic interview with Talk magazine, where she roasted J.Lo's infamous beauty sleep comment. "If I had the luxury of not having to sing my own songs, darling, I'd get more sleep too." Oof, not a jab, a precision strike. Because here's what was becoming clear. The industry was rewarding J.Lo with every opportunity Mariah had earned, without the vocal talent to match. And worse, J.Lo wasn't just succeeding, she was being positioned as Mariah's replacement. It wasn't just offensive, it was erasure. But Mariah wasn't done telling her side, because years later, she'd reveal that what went down wasn't just a coincidence. It was an orchestrated move by people who didn't want to see her win. And as you'll see in the next section, J.Lo's borrowed success goes deeper than one sample. Way deeper. Just when you thought the story couldn't get messier, enter Ashanti. By the early 2000s, Ashanti was becoming one of the most promising voices in R&B. She could sing, write, and perform, and she had that rare ability to turn a hook into a full-blown anthem. But behind the scenes, her name was popping up somewhere else too, on J.Lo's biggest hits. Let's start with I'm Real. The version that dominated the charts, the one fans remember, was not entirely sung by J.Lo. In fact, according to multiple sources, including Ashanti herself, her vocals were used all over the track. And not just background harmonies, we're talking hooks, ad-libs, full-on melodies. So how did this happen? Ashanti had already recorded a version of the song. She was told it was being saved, possibly for her own project. Then, suddenly, that exact track drops, with J.Lo's name on it. But listen closely. Her voice is still in there, clear as day. Some fans even joke, that's not J.Lo featuring Ashanti. That's Ashanti featuring J.Lo. And it doesn't stop with I'm Real. Ashanti also wrote and recorded Ain't It Funny, another major hit that ended up being released under J.Lo's name. The same thing happened. Ashanti sang the original version, laid down the vocals, gave it a vibe, and J.Lo came in after, added some lead vocals, and took the spotlight. Now pause for a second. Imagine being Ashanti. You're in the studio, writing your heart out, singing full tracks, building hits, and then watching someone else get the credit and the awards for your voice. Worse, you're being silenced about it. Ashanti later told Metro UK it was frustrating to watch her vocals and songwriting be smoke and mirrors. She stayed classy, but you could hear the hurt behind her words. She said, "You should always care about credit for what you do, especially nowadays because things are so smoke and mirrors." For years, Ashanti couldn't speak on it openly. She was young, new, and trying to survive an industry that rewarded silence and punished truth-tellers. And let's be real, J.Lo was winning. She had the image, the media backing, the fashion deals, and the machine behind her. Meanwhile, Ashanti, the one with the actual vocals, was pushed into the background, literally. This wasn't just shady, it was systemic, and it wasn't isolated to one or two tracks, because there were more songs, more vocals, and more artists, just like Ashanti, who found their work under someone else's spotlight. And guess who they kept giving the spotlight to? Here's the uncomfortable truth. In the music industry, it's not always about who sings the best. It's about who looks the part, who fits the mold, who who they can sell. And Jennifer Lopez? She fit the mold perfectly. She had the beauty, the body, the moves, the camera-ready smile. She was everything execs wanted in a pop star, except for one thing, the voice. That's where artists like Ashanti came in, with the voice, the writing, the artistry, but not always the marketability the label wanted to lead with. So instead of giving credit, the industry created a workaround. Use their talent in secret and promote the face they could sell. Even What's Love, the smash hit with Fat Joe and Ja Rule, was allegedly almost handed over to J.Lo after Ashanti had already laid it down. Fat Joe later revealed that, at the last minute, Irv Gotti called him at 3 in the morning and said, "We've got a version for you and J.Lo. Come to the studio now." The only reason Ashanti ended up keeping the song? Fat Joe stood his ground. But imagine how many songs weren't protected like that. How many tracks were quietly handed over behind closed doors. And J.Lo? She was ready every time. Even though the vocals weren't hers. Even though the songs weren't written by her. Even though the vibe, the sound, belonged to someone else. And this wasn't just about one person getting credit where it wasn't due. It was about the industry choosing image over talent, over and over again, especially when the true talent came from black and brown women who didn't fit their perfect pop fantasy. They chose J.Lo, they sidelined Ashanti, and they tried to erase Mariah because image was easier to control. Image could be shaped, styled, and sold. Talent, real, raw, undeniable talent, that couldn't be molded. And in the wrong hands, it became a threat. It wasn't just happening to Ashanti, it wasn't just happening to Mariah, it was a pattern, one that was finally starting to crack open. Because behind the vocals, behind the glamour, behind the lights, people were starting to wake up. The voices didn't match. The stories weren't adding up. And that's when the whispers got louder. Whispers that this wasn't just about J.Lo. It might even involve Beyonce, too. Because the same way Ashanti was being erased, some fans believe Mariah Carey was pushed out of the spotlight intentionally. And the person at the top of that rise? Well, you already know her name. While the spotlight burned hotter on Jennifer Lopez and Ashanti's vocals kept echoing from behind the curtain, another artist was climbing the mountain, Beyonce. Unlike J.Lo, Bey didn't need borrowed vocals. She had the pipes, the vision, and the grind. But what she also had? Strategy, precision, timing, and of course, Jay-Z. By the mid-2000s, Beyonce wasn't just a pop star. She was evolving into a brand, with a business empire taking shape behind her artistry. Every move was calculated. Every era, from Dangerously in Love to Lemonade, felt like another chess piece dropped into place. But here's where things start raising questions. Around this time, Mariah Carey's chart presence was noticeably fading. Sure, she had comebacks, like the emancipation of Mimi, but something felt different. The media wasn't treating her the same. Stories started shifting from her accomplishments to her image. Diva, unstable, out of touch. And while that narrative grew louder, Beyoncé's image became untouchable, flawless, controlled. Some insiders and fans began whispering, was this just how the industry worked? Or were certain artists being quietly elevated, while others were being erased? Think about it. Mariah was once Beyoncé's idol, the one she publicly thanked, cited as her inspiration. Then, silence. Why? Could it be that Beyoncé, in crafting her own legacy, one modeled more after Michael Jackson than Mariah Carey, knew that being too closely tied to Mariah might conflict with the image she was building? Some say Beyoncé didn't just distance herself, she actively reshaped her rise, so it excluded Mariah entirely. Others believe it went deeper. With Jay-Z's industry power, connections with label heads, streaming platforms, and media outlets, it's alleged that narratives were being managed, interviews pre-approved, headlines curated. The result? Mariah became less relevant in the eyes of a younger generation, while Beyoncé was being positioned as the voice, the icon, the standard. And when you think back to that silence, the sudden drop-off in admiration, the distance between mentor and megastar, you start to wonder, was this just a natural shift, or was Beyoncé climbing over the very woman who paved her way? Because legacy isn't just about talent, it's about who gets written into the story and who gets edited out. So now, we've come full circle. Mariah Carey, the vocal architect, the woman who inspired a generation, who fought her way to the top, was allegedly pushed out, silenced, and sidelined. But here's the thing about Mariah. She never forgets. For years, she let people believe she was just the glittery diva in a Santa suit, popping up every December to collect royalties and vanish until next year. But the truth? She was watching. She was documenting. She was waiting. When the meaning of Mariah Carey dropped in 2020, the world got its first real look behind the curtain. She didn't name every name, but she dropped enough breadcrumbs to let you know she had receipts. Now, insiders say she's not done. Sources close to Mariah claim she's working on something big. A second memoir, a docuseries, a full expose of the industry, the song thefts, and the ruthless takedowns she survived. And this time, she may name everyone. Beyoncé, Jennifer Lopez, Tommy Mottola, even the silent players behind the scenes who helped reshape the narrative of pop history. Because let's be real, if Mariah Carey comes out and tells everything, if she connects the dots between that firecracker sample, Ashanti's lost vocals, and the erasure of her legacy, it won't just be tea, it'll be a war. And it won't just expose two superstars, it'll shine a light on the entire machine behind them, the labels, the executives, the gatekeepers who decided whose story got told and whose voice got stolen. So now the question isn't whether sabotage happened, the question is who knew, who played along, and when Mariah finally speaks without filters or handlers, will the industry even be able to survive it? Because let's not forget, when Mariah sings, the world listens. And if she decides to stop singing and start spilling, every career built on silence might finally have to face the sound of truth. So, was Mariah Carey erased on purpose? Did Beyoncé's silence mean more than we thought? And was Jennifer Lopez truly the voice, or just the image chosen to replace one? This story isn't over, it's just beginning. Because once the curtain lifts, once the real voices come forward, everything we thought we knew about pop royalty might change. If you're ready for that truth, subscribe, drop your thoughts in the comments, like this video, and stay tuned. Because when the voice finally breaks her silence, the game will never be the same.